Hello and welcome to another daily devotion. As this week we talk about heaven. Um, I guess I'd ask, what do you think about when you think about heaven? What kind of images pop into your mind? Is it angels on like cotton candy like clouds, strumming harps with little halos over their head and wings furled? Streets of gold and pearly gates. Peter telling some jokes up there. Castles in the sky. What do you picture when you picture what lies beyond in the kingdom of God on earth as it is in heaven? Um, in Revelation 21, it has a picture of a new earth and a new Jerusalem. And unlike a lot of our conventional cartoon versions of heaven, this God of heaven comes down to earth, creates New Jerusalem here on earth. Heaven is, thank you, Belinda Carlisle, a place on earth that God, and it's really beautiful. I mean, if you think about it, the whole story of our human relationship with God starts off in Genesis, of course, in the garden. We eat ourselves out of house and home, taking the forbidden fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And basically, the consequence of humanity breaking God's trust, trying to in pride be like God and say, we got this without you, is distance. It cannot be in the closeness of the garden, walking through in the cool night. And yet, through all the other pages of the story, is a God who's doing everything God can to get him back in the garden, get that closeness back, restore the relationship. And so here at the end of Revelation, we have a garden scene, the leaves of the tree of life for the healing of the nations. And yes, streets and walls of gold, but they're translucent. You can actually see through them. So this isn't actually gold as we think of it. And here's what I love about it. People often talk about it, heaven, this heavenly city, in a literal sense of being wealthy because it's got pearls and sapphires and rubies and emeralds and gold. But here's my take on it. These are the things like, the gold standard. Gold is this precious metal on which we place a value on everything. It's kind of crazy, really ridiculous, but that this stone, this element, it determines the value of everything else because it's glittery and sparkly. But in heaven, this priceless commodity is like asphalt. It's gravel. You walk on it. It's just a practical thing. Yeah, it's pretty, but nobody really gives a rip about that stuff anymore. It's spackling for the walls of the kingdom. And by the way, the kingdom that is described here it has gates, but they're just ornamental because it says the gates never close. What? Yeah, the doors of this great city, this wall, are not fortified. They're not trying to keep anybody out because they're not worried. There's no threat. There's no fear. People aren't having to lock their doors at night or worried about who's out to get them or the boogeyman in the middle of the night, because perfect love has cast out all fear. And the playing field's been leveled. It's really a much more inclusive, open view of the kingdom, whose values are much different than our own. That is a beautiful thing, where there's not war or greed or hunger. Does it really look like this? I doubt it. Just a vision that John of Patmos has, or whoever wrote the book of Revelation. But it's a place where you're valued because of who you are, and a God who restores the relationship, brings it back to wholeness in a way that human beings, despite our greatest struggles, have never figured out fully. Thanks be to God.